Hey everybody, Dan here with Ellie Wilson. We've got a few more videos coming, and the first one is going to be the 9mm pistol max gauge. So we'll open a box here. Of course, the instruction sheets are included, and those are a very good thing to read through. They have all the information in here and a little bit more than what I'm going to cover. So make sure you read through those. It'll guide you through how to use the gauge. Go ahead and take it out. First thing you want to do, always with all of our products, we do have a coat of shipping oil on them. Make sure they're wiped clean. You can use solvent to rinse them out and then blow them off, wipe them off. Make sure that they are nice and clean and ready to use. Like I said, the 9mm pistol max gauge. This gauge is unique in that it does measure max cartridge dimension. It measures max case length, so there's a rim reamed in here. From the rim in the gauge all the way up, or step I should say, up to the top is your maximum case length. And then end to end on the gauge is max loaded round length. This is set to max SAMI spec. So this gauge will tell you that your round will chamber in every gun as long as it was chambered correctly. That doesn't mean this accounts for oversized chambers, because there may be some cases that don't go in this gauge that will still fire in your gun. And I think that's the biggest misconception. No chambers are created equal. So know that and take note of that, especially if you've got 3 or 4 of the same caliber gun. You're going to want to take a look at those cases, actually measure them, measure your fired cases, and you would be surprised how different they are. Some of them will actually come out oblonged with bulges. Really pay attention to that, because that affects your reloads significantly. So I have a batch of reloads here. It's a mixed batch. I was just going to test them here in the gauge. So this one's been cleaned out. I drop it in the gauge. It goes in perfect. It sits just below maximum for my case length. The next thing you want to do, if it passes that test and it passes your max cartridge diameter test, you set it on a flat surface. This one's a little bit rough and rubberized. You'll want a nice flat clean surface like a piece of granite or marble or glass, something like that. When you set it on that flat surface, if you see the case rise, that tells you your overall length is too long, and you'll need to seat the bullet a little bit deeper. Let's go through the rest, a few of these anyway. I'm not going to go through every single one. That one passes just fine. Sits just below max step. I'm looking at probably 5 or 10 thousandths. And set it on the flat surface, and the overall length is good as well. Now we run into this one, and we've got it protruding above the top of the gauge. There's a few reasons this can happen. The first is you have a bulge towards the end. It's real common to get a bulge right towards the head of the case. This one, actually, I can see it. I don't know if you can. But this would be where I would want to take some measurements and make sure that my sizing die is going all the way down as far as it can go in sizing this. If this case was fired out of an oversized chamber, even though the full-length die or sizing die went all the way down to the head, it's possible that brass pushes out, springs back, and still has a bulge. So this, if you do have an oversized chamber, this would still probably chamber okay and fire okay. But the gauge is telling you that something is off max dimensions, and you need to take a look at that. You can take the case, turn it around, and slide it in the gauge the opposite way and see where that bulge might be, and then measure it and make your changes as you need to. The other thing that can happen is if you put it in the gauge and it sticks out the top like this, you want to check the concentricity of your bullet to your case. I've had a few of these come back where the bullet is out of round by 6-7 thousandths, and so you got your bullet sitting over here and your case over here. You go to put it in the gauge is straight, and the bullet runs into this opened or chambered dimension here and won't allow the case to go in any further. If that happens, take a look at the side of the bullet. You'll probably see some scratches. That indicates that you could have a bullet or a loaded round that's not concentric. The next way to use this gauge is if you have some empty cases that you're sizing. After you run them through the sizer, you could drop it in the gauge and see if it's sitting above the max step. If it's sitting above the max step and your chamber or cartridge dimensions are okay, that passes that test okay, then you're going to want to trim those cases so they sit just below the max, about 5 thousandths on a 9mm. And that is the pistol max gauge. Thanks for listening.